Okay, so who's going to be the volunteer? And you can come and join with me. Don't worry, I'm here to teach. I'm not here to ask questions. I just want someone to interact. That's it. So this is an ultrasound image of interscalene block. Okay. This is the medial end, and this will be the lateral end. I think now in off the late in the recent exam, they're keeping some ultrasound guided images. Okay. So coming to the structures in the interscalene groove. So this first bulky muscle, right, is the, what muscle is this?
Sternocleidomastoid.
This bulky muscle, rounded muscle.
Scalenius anterior.
Trapezius.
Okay. There is trapezius in interscalene block. Okay, there is no trapezius.
Scalenus medius.
Okay, it is scalenus anterior. Okay, scalenus anterior muscle. Okay, okay, scalenus anterior. Okay, this is middle end, this is lateral end. And what are these three?
Brachial plexus.
Okay, so those are the C5, C5, C6, and C7 brachial plexus roots. Okay, so these three roots from the interscalene groove. Okay, this space is called as the interscalene groove. And where is interscalene groove is formed by which group of muscles? Which group of muscles from the interscalene groove?
Scalenus
anterior
and medius.
Okay, so this is scalenus
Anterior.
anterior. This is scalenus medius. Okay, so these are two groups which form the interscalene groove, and this tiny strip of muscle. Okay, after removing all these things, this tiny strip of muscle, right? There is one muscle here. So this is the lateralmost end of the sternocleidomastoid. So the sternocleidomastoid just covers the lateralmost, but as you can see in the anatomy, it is the groove between the sternocleidomastoid and interscalene muscle is the first groove. This is the first groove. Then between the scalenus anterior and scalenus medius, you got the second groove. The second groove is the interscalene groove, right? So this is the lateralmost edge of the sternocleidomastoid. And what are the important nerves which are located here?
Superficial cervical plexus.
Good. So it is a posterior border of sternocleidomastoid where you have the superficial cervical plexus. So if you give 10 to 15 ml of local anesthetic here, you block the superficial cervical plexus. Okay. Good. Let's move on to question discussion. Fine. So this is just a brushing of the anatomy. So you got the sternal head and you got the clavicular head of the sternocleidomastoid. And in between sternocleidomastoid, there is a first groove here that's formed by the lateral head of sternocleidomastoid interscalene. And as you roll over, you get the second groove here. That is the interscalene groove. And you have to enter your needle in the interscalene groove for your interscalene brachial plexus blockade. So the needle direction to be towards the most important thing, never direct the needle at towards the medial end of the body, okay, towards the median plane, where the cervical pleura is located here. Okay, the pleural dome comes here. If you direct the needle medially, you can have the pleural injury. So never ever direct medially. Other important thing, medially you have the vertebrate located at C6 level. Okay, so coming to surface landmarks, first thing you have to locate is the cricoid cartilage. Next thing is the clavicular head of the sternocleidomastoid. So draw a line. Okay, draw a line along this line from the cricoid cartilage as it transects the sternocleidomastoid. Identify the second groove. That will be your point of entry. Okay, ultrasound is done in this way. The pointer is facing towards you, the lateral end. The other end will be the middle end. You can do in plane like this. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the structures. Everyone able to interpret the structures? So as you see here, this is the sternocleidomastoid which is running. So that will be the topmost layer. Below the sternocleidomastoid, you have this anterior scalene muscle and the middle scalene. In between, the interscalene brachial plexus new roots are sandwiched. Good. You have identified the structures. Perfect. What are the indications for giving interscalene block?
Shoulder surgeries.
Okay, shoulder surgeries, proximal arm surgeries. Sometimes it's been you can give an even up to elbow surgeries. Okay, whereas for the hand and the finger surgeries, it is not advisable. Okay, which is the main nerve roots which are not blocked?
Ulnar nerve.
Nerve roots.
Ulnar. C8T1.
So C8 and T1 are not blocked. As we saw, C5, C6, C7 are located there. So C8 and T1 roots are not blocked. So ulnar nerve root value is C8, T1. So that is why you don't get anesthesia on the ulnar side. What are the contraindications for giving an interscalene block?
Coagulopathy.
Local site
Other side,
infection.
diaphragmatic paralysis.
Diaphragmatic paralysis.
COPD.
There will be absolute and relative. Absolute or patient
refusal.
refusal, allergy to local anesthetics. Okay.
Infection site.
And infection at the site of entry. And coagulopathy is only relative. Rest all things: contralateral phrenic nerve paralysis, okay, contralateral lung injury, severe obesity, okay, severe obesity, obstructive sleep apnea patient, and coagulopathic issues. So these are some relative contraindications. What are the most important vessel which has to be precautiously avoided in interscalene block?
Vertebral
Okay, so vertebral artery enters at the C6 transverse process. So when you give it below the C6 level, you don't have that chances of injuring vertebral artery. Whereas at the cricoid level, when you give it, there is a good chance that you can puncture the vertebral artery. So that is why they have introduced a newer block called lower interscalene block, which has been given just below the cricoid cartilage levels in such a way that the chances of vertebral artery puncture is less. So one is a classical block, another one is called as the lower interscalene block. What are the two different sonographic approaches for nerve block?
In plane and out of plane.
Okay, in plane and out of plane. So basic difference is if you come in line along the long axis of the probe, that is called as in plane, where you can see the entire needle. Whereas when a probe is like this, right, and you come as out of plane like this, just from instead of perpendicular to the axis of the probe, that becomes out of plane, where you see only the tip of the needle as a point. So these are the two basic approaches in ultrasound guided nerve block. Okay, right. So you are using a PNS guided. Please, rest all, please mute. Just one alone unmute. Rest all, please mute. Right. So if you're doing a PNS guided, right, what is the important twitch you elicit? What is the important twitch you look for? One volunteer, rest all plan mute. Appu, right? Appu, can you volunteer?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, upper trunk muscles like biceps or
Okay. Biceps is not an acceptable answer. What is the important twitch you look for? You have to look for the deltoid contraction. Okay. So deltoid contraction is an ideal twitch response. Okay. So deltoid is supplied by C5, C6, right? What is the main nerve supply for the shoulder joint? What are the two main nerves which supply the shoulder joint?
Suprascapular nerve and axillary nerve.
Yes, suprascapular nerve and the axillary nerve. So these are the two nerves which come from the upper trunk. Axillary nerve is a terminal branch of the posterior cord, and suprascapular nerve is a branch from the upper trunk. So these two nerves cover nearly 95% of the entire shoulder joint. So both the suprascapular nerve and the axillary nerve, okay, have the suprascapular nerve and the axillary nerve have the root value of C5 and C6, which are beautifully blocked in the interscalene. So that is why you get a dense block in interscalene block, particularly for the shoulder or the proximal arm surgeries. Whereas when you go more distal elbow, you get supplies from the median nerve and the ulnar nerve. So naturally, it did not cover a complete analgesia or anesthesia. Good. Then other important thing, what are the main complications of giving an interscalene block? First and foremost,
phrenic nerve.
okay, yes. What is the percentage of phrenic nerve block?
It is 100%.
Yes,
sir,
100%.
if
Why
it is
phrenic
properly.
nerve is blocked 100%? Why there is 100% blockade of phrenic nerve?
So due to
Okay.
subarachnoid space continue.
Now there is no relation to subarachnoid space. Okay. See what are the nerve root value of phrenic now?
Contribution.
Sorry. What are the root value of
C4,
C3, C4, and C5? Okay. If you see here, the C5 contribution of the phrenic nerve generally travels here. Okay. The phrenic nerve will be exactly located here. So when you give more than 10 ml, okay, when you give more than 10 ml in the interscalene groove, what happens, the drug ejects into this space, and majority of the time, if you give more than 10 ml, you block the phrenic nerve. So phrenic nerve will be located on top of the interscalene muscle below the prevertebral fascia. So since in close proximity of the interscalene brachial plexus block, more than 10 ml, the drug will eject in this space and block the phrenic nerve. So that's why you get 100% chances of having a phrenic nerve blockade. What are the other complications of giving interscalene?
Horner syndrome.
Horner syndrome. Okay, what are the incidence of Horner syndrome? 25%. Okay, so what are the components of Horner syndrome? What are the
nitrosis,
Meiosis and ophthalmos.
Ptosis, meiosis, enophthalmos, then
Loss of
anhydrosis.
ciliary.
Okay, ptosis, meiosis, enophthalmos, lot of ciliospinal reflexes. Okay, what are the other next complication of giving an interscalene block?
Pneumothorax.
Pneumothorax is very, very unusual. Okay, pneumothorax is very unusual in a patient with because it is well low than the interscalene region.
Accidental intra-articular
Intravascular injection.
intravascular
Okay, vertebral artery injection. Very, very
local
important.
anesthetic toxicities.
Okay, very, very important. Vertebral artery injection. The moment you enter the vertebral artery, immediately patient will throw up seizures, right? Then you can give intrathecally because of the continuity of the scalene spaces. Okay, you can give intrathecal injection, intravascular injection, phrenic nerve blockage, Horner syndrome. Then most important thing, recurrent laryngeal nerve weakness. Right, incidence is 12 to 15%. So recurrent laryngeal nerve weakness is another important vital complication. And of course, like with any block, you can have complications like LAST, local anesthetic systemic toxicity. Good. So any doubt in the interscalene block? Any questions?
Sir, why recurrent laryngeal nerve is so commonly ignored, 12 to 15%?
Recurrent laryngeal nerve block is commonly involved because of the involvement of recurrent laryngeal nerve in the tracheoesophageal groove. If you see here, all right. If you give the block at this location, right, what happens, the drug gets escaped through the prevertebral space and it reaches the cervical sympathetic chain located here. And again, the same tracheoesophageal groove, you have that cervical sympathetic chain involvement is the reason for Horner syndrome. And in the tracheoesophageal groove, you have the recurrent laryngeal nerve, which is causing the hoarseness of voice.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so there are certain blocks called phrenic nerve sparing blocks for shoulder surgery. Can you name few phrenic nerve sparing blocks?
suprascapular plus axillary.
Where these blocks can be used for shoulder surgery, which doesn't block the phrenic nerves.
Subclavian perivascular.
Subclavian perivascular, there are also even 20% chance of blocking the phrenic nerve. Selective suprascapular.
Upper travel.
Selective suprascapular plus axillary nerve block. You can give that. So this is, you can do the shoulder analgesia, but doesn't block the phrenic nerve. Then SCUT, okay, selective upper trunk block. Okay, so you just scan with ultrasound. You're locating the upper trunk alone, and then you can just block the upper trunk predominantly, well away from the interscalene groove, in such a way that it doesn't block the phrenic nerve. So selective upper trunk block or SCUT block. Then costoclavicular. Costoclavicular block is another block where you can give a shoulder analgesia without affecting the phrenic nerve. So these are some of the few examples for phrenic nerve sparing blocks. They might ask you in the exam, so have a touch on that. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so before moving on next one, just one volunteer unmute and rest all can put your mics on mute. There are so many noise disturbance here. Someone please, very fast, because a lot of things to discuss. Anupama.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. You're there. Okay, this is your next ultrasound image. So what do you find? What block is this?
Supraclavicular block.
Okay, it is a supraclavicular block. I am marking this is as a medial end, this as the lateral end. Can you identify this structure?
Brachial plexus, sir.
Okay, so what is this appearance called as?
Traffic light sign.
Traffic light sign. Traffic light sign is here. Okay, this is
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
red.
Bunch of
orange.
grapes.
Sure, correct. Yes, sir. Yes.
Rest of the word. When I given a chance, you're not unmuting. Now it's your chance is over. Only Anupama can answer. Please mute. Okay. Please mute. Okay. So this is called as the bunch of grape appearance or
Correct, sir.
honeycomb appearance. Okay.
Sorry,
So what is name of this junction called?
sir.
It is called as the corner pocket. Okay. This is called as the corner pocket. Why it is important is when you're giving a supraclavicular block,
Yes.
local anesthetic has to be definitely deposited at this corner pocket junction because that is where the
Inferior
lower trunk is located, mainly the C8 and
lower
T1.
trunk. Yes.
C8 and T1. So if you don't give the injection in the corner pocket here, you tend to give ulnar nerve sparing. Okay, that is the most important thing. And what is this one? What is this structure?
IJV, sir.
That's simple. Which artery is located close to the supraclavicular brachial plexus?
Subclavian artery, sir.
Yes, that's it. Simple.
Yes, sir. Subclavian artery. Yes, sir.
It's a subclavian artery. Okay. What is this white line?
Pleura.
It is called. It is not pleura.
First
It is
strip.
first
First
strip.
strip. First
Okay.
strip, sir.
First strip. Okay. This first line is the first strip. Okay. So bunch of grapes, right brachial plexus, corner pocket, subclavian artery, first strip. Okay. What is this one called? This muscle called as? What muscle comes and inserts anterior to the subclavian artery in the first strip? Okay, this is the insertion of anterior scalene muscle. Okay, so this muscle is the anterior scalene. Behind the anterior scalene, you have the subclavian artery. Behind the subclavian artery, you have the brachial plexus, and behind the brachial plexus, you have the middle scalene. Okay, or scalene is medial. So anterior scalene, middle scalene. In between that, you have the subclavian artery and the brachial plexus. So the entire brachial plexus in the supraclavicular region is covered by a muscle. Do you know what this muscle is? No, it is not sternocleidomastoid. It is called as the omohyoid. Okay. Omohyoid is a muscle which covers the brachial plexus in the supraclavicular zone. So these are the main structures. I think they don't go to omohyoid for you, just for the understanding I'm telling you. So mainly they'll ask you, what are this bunch of grapes? What is this location called as? What is this vessel? What is this structure? They might mark you this structure. In addition, they might mark you anterior scalene and middle scalene. So this is the major thing they ask. Okay. What is this structure? This structure.
Lung tissue.
Okay. That is the lung tissue. Okay. Why it is dark?
Here is dark.
Okay. Because of the acoustic reflection, air appears always dark, air and fluids. Okay. Let's move on to the discussion. Okay. So just have an anatomical understanding. If you see here from the anterior to posterior along the first strip, the first one which comes is a subclavian vein. Then you have the insertion of anterior scalene. Then comes the subclavian artery. And behind that, you have the brachial plexus. Then you have the middle scalene insertion. So this is the order of arrangement. Okay. Subclavian vein, anterior scalene insertion, subclavian artery, brachial plexus, middle scalene insertion. Subclavian vein here, anterior scalene insertion, subclavian artery, brachial plexus, middle scalene insertion. Do you understand the anatomy now?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. For other guys, is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So never miss anything. Most probably in upper limbs, they'll put you only these two blocks. Don't worry about the costa-clavicular, infraclavicular axillary. They might not put those issues. Right. So again, another important thing is the surface landmark. So this is the sternal head. This is going to be the clavicular head. Anupama, have you heard about the safety point of injection?
No, sir.
Okay, the safety point of injection is 1 inch lateral to clavicular head of sternocleidomastoid or 2.5 centimeter. Okay, So 2.5 centimeter or 1 inch away from the clavicular border of sternocleidomastoid. So this is called as the safety margin of injection. So that is where you have to do the supraclavicular brachial plexus for PNS guided block. Okay. So the safety margin of injection is 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters away from. Shit. Okay. So 2.5 centimeters away from the clavicular head or 1 inch distance. So why it is no? Because here is the cervical pleura or the pleural dome is present medial to the rib. Lateral to the rib, you have the brachial plexus coming out like this. Okay, sorry. The subclavian artery coming out like this from the thorax, and the brachial plexus travels like this behind the subclavian artery, which is the cervical pleura is 2.5 centimeter medial from this junction. So that is why the 1 inch away from the clavicular border is taken as the safety margin of injection. Okay, good. So this is how the supraclavicular brachial plexus is done. So probe is oriented in this direction. Marker will be towards the lateral end. The other end will be towards the medial end. And in plane injection like this. For PNS guided block, as I said, this is the clavicular border, clavicular border, 2.5 centimeter, 1 inch, and that will be the entry point behind the brachial plexus. And what are the surgeries which are covered or indication for supraclavicular block, Anupama?
Upper arm surgery, sir.
Okay, arm surgeries, elbow surgeries, arm surgeries, hand surgeries, forearm surgeries,
Hand
arm surgery.
surgery, forearm.
Okay,
Yes,
elbow, forearm, except for the proximal shoulder, you can do any surgeries in the arm, right? So previously it is called as the spinal anesthesia of the arm. Okay.
yes, sir.
So brachial plexus, supraclavicular is called a spinal anesthesia arm, but now it has been it is more appropriate term for the costoclavicular block. Costoclavicular block is more recently called as the spinal anesthesia arm. But don't worry, if you know that if they ask this question, you can write supraclavicular block broadly. Is it your mic which has got a lot of disturbance, Anupama?
Sir, I am in hospital.
Oh, yeah, right, fine, agreed, no worries. Okay, what is the important twitch or the muscle twitch you look for? Muscle contraction you look for. As I said, in interscalene, it is going to be the deltoid twitch.
Yes, sir.
In supraclavicular block, what muscle twitch you look for? Mainly for the finger muscles contraction. Okay, either it could be flexion or extension. So finger contraction is more important. Only when you get a finger contraction, you get 100% chance of having a successful block, and the nerve which is paired is going to be the ulnar nerve. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What are the complications of supraclavicular block? Specific for supraclavicular block.
Pneumothorax, sir.
Pneumothorax. Okay, pneumothorax is very vital complication. If you ask me, ultrasound can avoid pneumothorax, it is not 100% so. Okay, so even with the use of ultrasound, pneumothorax is still a possible complication in an inexperienced hand, but it can definitely reduce the incidence. Okay, so pneumothorax specific for when it comes to supraclavicular block. Apart from pneumothorax, you can have phrenic nerve block. Again, you can have hoarseness of voice when you have a large volume, subclavian artery puncture, then nerve injury, last all blah blah things which applies to all conventional blocks. Complications, see, generally when they keep a regional anesthesia station, they will ask you what are the nerve roots which are blocked in case depending upon the type of block they're giving. Then they'll ask you what are the indication for the particular block, then any specific complication of the block, and what are the complications of nerve block in general. Okay, so this is how the entire questions will be framed when it comes to regional anesthesia station. Good. So we discussed about indication and contraindication, all those things. Okay. So now I'm just going to put a small video just to have an idea of how the brachial plexus is formed basically in ultrasound guided. So this is how you scan in an ultrasound. This is how you scan. So so what I marked here is that this is a thyroid cartilage. This is a cricoid cartilage. The probe, linear high frequency probe, is kept on top of the cricoid cartilage, and then it is slided to the lateral direction to the posterior triangle. And this mark is the sternocleidomastoid. After you reach the posterior triangle, the probe is slided down. Okay, now I'm crossing sternocleidomastoid, reach the posterior triangle. Once I reach the posterior triangle, I go down, scan the interscalene plexus, then I go to the brachial plexus. Okay, now let's see how it appears in the ultrasound. This is to have so that you don't forget the entire images, right? Okay, when I keep the probe in the cricoid cartilage, you see this rounded structure, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What is this rounded structure? So this is the border of the cricoid cartilage. Okay, cricoid cartilage appears as a rounded structure, and the air column inside appears very dark. Okay, so these are all the tracheal rings inside. So these are the cricoid cartilage. What is this homogeneous structure is present on top of the cricoid cartilage?
Thyroid, sir.
That's the thyroid gland. Okay, so that is the thyroid gland. So on top of cricoid cartilage, you have the thyroid gland. Okay, now let's move on to the video as I speak. Okay, so as I slide lateral in the probe, what is the first thing I see? I'm sorry. So as I slide the probe, okay, now the ultrasound has reached this plane, okay, this location. So what is the muscle, this one? What is this muscle? Oh guys, come on.
Sternocleidomastoid.
Yeah, it should be sternocleidomastoid, right? The probe is here, right?
Sternocleidomastoid.
So that the muscle on top is the sternocleidomastoid. So below the sternocleidomastoid, you have two structures. What are the two vital structures?
Carotid.
And
Carotid and IJV.
Sorry. Let me come back again. My alternator is stuck again. Hang on. Just hang on. I'll reconnect it again. I'll reshare it again. Just hold on for a minute. Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let me put the video, right? So this is a cricoid cartilage. Now I'm going to slide the probe to the sternocleidomastoid. Right. As I come to the sternocleidomastoid, I notice two important vital structure in the middle. What are these two important vital structures?
Carotid and sir IJV.
subclavian artery.
Okay, so this is there is no subclavian in the neck, okay? So this is the carotid artery.
Carotid.
Okay? This is the carotid and this is the subclavian, internal jugular vein, okay? And these three structures form what?
Carotid sheath.
Okay, this is the carotid sheath. So carotid artery, internal jugular vein, and behind those inside the carotid sheath is the vagus nerve. Okay. So how to differentiate carotid artery from internal jugular vein? So this is more structural because it is muscle, it is elastic, it is a thick structure. This this is compressible structure, so you get an unusual size of shape. Whereas this is perfectly circular in an ultrasound image. So that's how we differentiate carotid artery from the internal jugular vein. Right now, the probe is going to go even more lateral. Okay, so as I come to the posterior triangle of the neck, so starting from the center, I slide it down. Okay, now look at this structure. Okay, look at this structure. This is the C5 nerve root. Okay, I'll slide it again. So that's a C5 nerve root. It is getting into the foramen. It is coming out of the foramen. Okay, that's a C5. As you slide down, the next nerve root which comes is the C6. As I slide down, the next nerve root which comes is the C7. This is C8 nerve root. Shall I put the video again?
Yes, sir.
My alternator is getting stuck again and again. That's why I'm facing problem. Okay. So I'm sliding lateral, coming to the posterior triangle. Right. So these are the transverse process of C5 nerve root. Okay. The transverse process of cervical spine has got two tubercles, anterior tubercle and the posterior tubercle. So this is the posterior tubercle and this is the anterior tubercle. So the first nerve root which comes is the C5. Okay, this is C5 nerve root. Then as I slide down, the second nerve root comes, this is C6. As I slide down, the third nerve root comes, which is going to be the C7. Okay, so as C5, C6 and C7 come, they form in the interscalene groove. So this is anterior scalene muscle, this is middle scalene, this is the interscalene groove, C5, C6 and C7. Then as I slide down, the next nerve root which comes down is the C8. Okay, this is the first rib, C8. Then as I slide down to the supraclavicular zone, the T1 nerve root will be coming here. As I slide down, it comes and joins and forms the corner pocket here. So this is the classical appearance of supraclavicular. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes,
So this is how the brachial plexus is formed. Okay. So another important thing in the brachial plexus image they can keep you is inside the brachial plexus image, there can be one vital artery which is traveling in the middle of the brachial plexus. What is that artery called as? They can keep you that image. So that artery will separate upper and middle trunk from the lower trunk. So just that is one of the
Dorsal artery.
yes, it is called as the dorsal scapular artery. So dorsal scapular artery is one of the important artery which runs within the substance of the brachial plexus, which separates upper and middle trunk from the lower trunk. Okay. So that's another vessel they can keep you in the exam. I can show that vessel here. So again, one last time, follow this video. Sternocleidomastoid, carotid artery, and the internal jugular vein. So two tubercles of C5. C5 nerve root is out, getting into the foramen, coming out. Then as you slide down, C6, it has got two fascicles. Then as you come down, C7. Then as you slide down, C8. Then as you slide down, you can see one vessel traveling within the substance of the sternocleidomastoid. See here, vessel traveling transverse. Do you appreciate this vessel?
Yes.
Okay, that vessel is the dorsal scapular artery. Okay, good. So in the upper limb, I've just mentioned supraclavicular and interscalene brachial plexus. Infraclavicular, actually, I didn't keep because I don't think so. They might keep an ultrasound image of that thing. So is that clear? The upper limb block.
Sir, I have a doubt. Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, while performing block under USG supraclavicular,
Yeah.
shall we wait till confirmation of passage of drug into the corner pocket to prevent ulnar sparing? Like till we
Yes.
visualize?
Okay. So when you give the block, the most important thing is when you give the block, when you deposit the local anesthetic here, right? It should lift from the brace. Okay, this local anesthetic has the nerve roots has to be lifted from the wall attachment from the first rib. Okay, so unless if you don't see that lift, it'll get spared.
Okay, sir. And sir, suppose if we are doing it blindly,
Okay.
does the massage help in the spread of the drug to corner
Okay, so
pocket?
the problem with the blind block is, yes, you see here inside the brachial plexus there are multiple facial septae. Okay, so this prevents the approximate spread. Okay, so in order to achieve a perfect block, 100% block, you have to get the needle at least to the lower part, or the middle and the lower trunk. So when you get in at this point, when you get the needle tip or the penis needle here, this is a point where you appreciate the fingertips, okay, or the finger contraction. Whereas when the block needle tip is only here is predominantly of the upper trunk brachial plexus. So when you stimulate the upper trunk brachial plexus, what happens? You will have an elbow contraction. All these are good, but problem is the drug doesn't spread here because of the huge sheath. So that is why they expect you to have a finger contraction as an ideal response for supraclavicular brachial plexus and not the elbow contraction. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, where is the cervical sympathetic trunk is located,
Okay.
sir?
Cervical sympathetic chain. Okay. here. Okay, so if you see here, the sternocleidomastoid is overlapping the anterior scalene here. Okay, so in between sternocleidomastoid, there is one sheath below here. This is prevertebral fascia. This is deep cervical fascia. Okay, so in between sternocleidomastoid and the prevertebral fascia covering the anterscalene muscles, you have the cervical plexus root located. So if we deposit the local anesthetic here and separate this space, it becomes cervical plexus block. Okay, how much volume we give for interscalene?
30 ml, sir.
20 ml.
20 ml.
20 to
20 ml
30
should be fine. For supraclavicular, you need at least 30 ml. Okay, you can tell whichever is your institutional practice. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So now we'll move on to the chest wall
Sir,
blocks.
one more last doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Suppose we are placing a catheter, sir, perineural catheter.
That's
What
not
will be the
important.
ideal
Don't worry about the exam. Okay. Don't worry
Okay.
about the catheters. They don't ask in the exam for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Don't worry
Sir,
about it.
can they
If there
ask
is time, I'll
axillary-
answer this question at the end. Yeah.
Sir, can they ask axillary block?
Axillary block ultrasound image, they might not keep you because it is very difficult unless they give you the anatomical image parallelly. Okay.
Oh, okay, sir.
So I think so they might not give. Whereas interscalene and supraclavicular, you can identify with the images alone.
Oh, okay.
Moving on to the chest wall block. So you got a 35 years female patient for coming for breast augmentation surgery. I need one volunteer. Rest all please mute.
Sir, I'll volunteer.
Okay, Rolly. What are the different regional anesthesia options in a patient coming for breast augmentation surgery?
Sir, PEC 1, PEC 2 blocks
PEC 1, okay. Number 2,
and
PEC 2. 3,
intercostal block, erector spinae muscle block.
okay. Erector spinae muscle block, very important. This was kept in the last OSCE. Okay, erector spinae plane block was kept. And then you can have serratus plane. Have you
Serratus
heard
anterior.
about?
Sir, serratus anterior plane block, no, sir.
Okay, serratus plane
These two-
block.
yeah.
Then paravertebral. Lastly, epidural.
Yes, sir.
These are the different regional anesthesia options. Last year, for the last batch, they kept erector spinae block. So that's why I've included PECs 1 and 2 and for block for this batch discussion. Okay, right. So how does the PECs 1 and 2 is done? Okay, the probe is kept exactly in an oblique plane. Okay, in an oblique plane such that you identify at the second rib and the third rib, right? So that is where the probe is kept in an oblique plane. Okay. When you keep the probe in an oblique plane, what are the muscles and structures you witness? Okay, so this bony structure is going to be what?
So-
Rolly? What is it going to be this bony structure?
So rib,
Okay, it is the second rib.
second rib, yes.
PEX block is done between the second and the third rib. That's the most important thing. PEX 1 block. Okay, so second rib here. What is this first two structures? These structures.
Sir, so we have skin subacute, then
Okay, this
pectoralis
is going to
major
be
and
skin.
minor.
This is going to be skin and subcutaneous tissue. Okay, fatty tissues. You can see the fatty globules here. Okay, like rounded pockets. So this is skin and subcutaneous tissue. Once you go below skin and subcutaneous tissue, there is one big bulky muscle here. Okay, the first muscle. What is
Yes.
this big bulky muscle?
Pectoralis major and
Okay, so that's the pectoralis major. Okay, that's a big bulky muscle just below the subcutaneous tissue. Below the pectoralis major, there is another muscle plane which is
pectoralis
much
minor.
thinner. That is going to be pex minor. Okay, and what are these muscles?
Then serratus anterior comes in.
Now, what are these muscles
Intercostal
at the
muscles.
second limb?
Okay,
Intercostal.
Intercostal.
Okay, so there is one rib here, that be another rib here. When there is rib between, what are these muscles? It must be
so then intercostal muscle.
intercostal muscles. Okay,
Yes.
so when you keep the probe in the second or third rib level, you don't find the serratus plane. Okay, so these
Okay,
are
okay.
the intercostal muscles. What is this below white glistening structure?
So pleura,
So this is pleura. Below this is the lung tissues. This white glistening structure is a pleura. Pex major, pex minor, second rib. Okay. So where do you inject the local anesthetic in pex 1 block?
so between pectoralis major and minor.
Okay. So you inject the local anesthetic in this plane. Okay. You separate pex major and pex minor, deposit the local anesthetic here. Okay. So at what location you have to look at, you have to give the drug is you have to look for the thoracoacromial artery. That will be a tiny vessel pulsating in between pex major and minor. And that vessel is so important because I'll tell you now, what are the two important nerves you block, Dr. Rowley, in PEX block, PEX 1 block?
Sir, lateral pectoral nerve.
Okay, so there are only two nerves which are blocked in the PEX1 block. One is the medial pectoral nerve, another is the lateral
Lateral
pectoral nerve.
pectoral nerve.
Okay,
Yes.
so these two are branches from
Sir, lateral cord, sir.
lateral cord and medial cord. Okay,
Yes. Sir.
so these are branches from the brachial plexus basically. So they are located in close proximity to the thoracoacromial artery, which lies in between the PEX major and PEX minor. So once you scan and find the tiny pulsation, just deposit 15 to 20 ml of 0.25 bupivacaine or whichever local anesthetic you use in your hospital. That is fine. So that will block the medial and lateral pectoral nerve. Imagine, understand, in PEX1, only medial and lateral pectoral nerve are blocked. Okay.
Yes.
Good. So this is the probe is kept in an oblique angle between second and the third rib, and the needle entry will be like this, in plane. Okay.
Yes. Sir.
Now for the PEX2, what should you should do? You have to slide the probe until third or fourth rib in the same oblique angulation. Slide the probe
Yes.
to the third or the fourth rib. Okay. At that point, you will see the pectoralis minor will be getting smaller and getting ended up, and the serratus muscle will start.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so this is again understanding of the PEX1 block. So PEX major, PEX minor, second rib, third rib, intercostal muscles and pleura. This is the dark thoracoacromial artery. So get the needle from in plane from this direction, deposit between PEX major and minor, open this space with 20 ml of local anesthetic. This is how you do the PEX
Yes.
block. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now I'm going to slide the probe down. Okay, slide the probe down. I've come to the fourth rib now. Right. In the fourth rib, PEX major is there, PEX minor is there. What is another tiny muscle which is starting? So that
this is
muscle is
serratus
the
anterior.
serratus anterior. So serratus anterior comes and gets inserted from the level of fourth rib. So second and third rib, you don't appreciate the serratus muscle. Okay. So the same oblique angle, slide down further, you come and identify this thin strip of serratus muscle. As you go to fifth, sixth rib, it becomes expanded and become very, very big as you go to the posterior axillary line. Okay. So this onset of or the origin of serratus muscle and PEX minor junction is most important thing. So this is where you deposit between the PEX minor and the
And
serratus.
serratus anterior.
You deposit for the PEX2 block. So what is the nerves which are blocked in the PEX2, Rolly?
So lateral pectoral nerve.
Okay, that comes in PEX1. Here there is no lateral pectoral nerve.
Okay. So then intercostal nerves.
Okay, intercostal nerves, which nerves?
Sir, I don't know.
Okay, so it blocks long thoracic nerve of Bell, okay, which supplies the serratus muscle. Okay, long thoracic
Yes.
nerve. Then intercostal nerves T2 to T6. Okay, so these are the nerves which are blocked in the PEX2. In PEX1, medial pectoral nerve
Lateral pectoral
and
nerve.
lateral pectoral nerve. In PEX2, long thoracic nerve or the nerve to serratus anterior. Apart from that, in addition, it blocks the anterior cutaneous nerves of T6 to T2 to T6. So these are the nerves which are blocked in the PEX2 block. PEX1 deposited between PEX major and minor. PEX2 deposited between PEX minor and the
Serratus anterior.
serratus anterior. Good. Okay, so this PEX, when you do a PEX block for the breast surgery, PEX 1 and 2 has to be done combined together. Okay, if you do PEX 2 alone, then the PEX major muscles will be painful. So PEX major and PEX minor are supplied by the medial lateral pectoral nerves. Okay,
Yes.
is that clear
Yes, sir.
for others?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
sir.
Perfect. So
PNS cannot be used.
PNS cannot be utilized. You need an ultrasound to do a PEX major, a PEX minor, a PEX 1 or PEX 2 block.
Sir, which type of probe is used in this block?
These are all superficial tissues, right? They're just below the skin. You use high frequency linear probe.
So what is modified PEC block
There is nothing called modified plex block. Where it is given?
in books?
There's nothing. There's only PEX 1 and PEX 2, which is one which is given in the standard resources everywhere. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Good. So next we'll move on to serratus plane. I think I didn't include serratus plane. So this was the image kept in your last examination. Okay, for breast surgery, they kept the erectospinal block. Okay, so erectospinal block is done in the back. Okay, you keep the probe. So this is the midline, right? This is a midline, and you keep the probe in a cephalocaudal angle, lateral to the midline in such a way that the ultrasound goes and hit the transverse process. Okay, so this structure is the transverse process, right? And at the upper thoracic level until T6 level, you have three muscles, three important muscles located in the chest. From the skin, subcutaneous tissue, the first muscle will be
Trapezius.
trapezius. Okay, trapezius is the first superficial muscle. Below the trapezius, you have the
Latissimus dorsi.
rhomboides. Okay, rhomboides. Latissimus dorsi comes only in the lower thorax, not in the upper thorax. Okay, so upper thorax, it is going to be rhomboides muscle. Trapezius, rhomboides, and next comes the tiny strip of muscle here. This is nothing but the erector spinae. Okay, so all these chest wall blocks like PEX1 and PEX2, they are not specific nerve blocks. They're all called as the facial plane blocks, which means you are not targeting any particular nerve. You are giving a large volume of local anesthetic in that facial plane. Okay, it is not a particular nerve block. It is called as the facial plane blocks, which means you have to give minimum 20 to 30 ml in all these blocks. I'm not telling volume for each block. It goes without saying that in all facial plane blocks, you have to give at least 20 ml so the drug spreads in the facial plane and block those nerves. Okay. Okay. Trapezius. Then the second muscle is rhomboides, and next muscle is the erector spinae muscle. Okay. Where to deposit the local anesthetic in erector spinae block?
Below the erector spinae plane,
Okay.
after the muscle.
So in between the transverse process,
transverse
okay,
process.
in between the transverse process and the erector spinae muscle, the drug has to be deposited here. Okay. When you deposit the drug here, it will spread linearly above, it will spread linearly down. It will lift the erector spinae muscle. So that is a good sign of perfect injection. Okay. If you give inside the muscle, you'll get intramuscular injection. It becomes rounded spreading. You should not have that oval spreading. You should have a linear spreading above. You should have a linear spreading below. In thoracic level, it has been shown that it spreads up to 8 levels. If you give a T5, it goes 4 levels above, it goes 4 levels below. Whereas at lumbar level, it spreads only 4 levels because the erector spinae muscle is very bulky at the lumbar level and the facial plane is not as good as in thoracic level. So if you give a T5, 4 levels above, 4 levels below in thoracic level. Okay. So what are the common indications where you give erector spinae block?
So breast surgeries, MRM,
Okay, breast surgeries, very good.
and then thoracotomies,
Okay,
VATS.
all thoracotomies, anywhere incision the thoracotomies, then rib fractures for
Rib fractures.
analgesia. Okay, analgesia for IC replacement.
Okay, sir.
Okay, then spine surgeries, all spine surgeries. So laminectomies, you can give, it's a good analgesic option. There have been a lot of surgeries exploring the use of erector spinae block in spine surgeries. I've done biopsies with just erector spinae block alone. Okay, so it can be done. It's a good analgesia. So the mechanism of erector spinae block is still inconclusive. Majority of the time, it blocks the posterior primary ramus, okay, or the dorsal nerve. So if this is a vertebra, okay, you got the pedicle, then you got the lamina, and then you got the spinous process. Right. So when the nerve root comes out, okay, it divides, and when the spinal nerve root comes out, it divides into dorsal rami and the ventral rami. Okay, and the erector spinae muscle is located here. So when they get the needle comes and hit the transverse process and deposits local anesthetic between the erector spinae muscle and the transverse process, the posterior primary rami or the dorsal rami is blocked in all the patients. Whereas in some patients, in few set of patients, in DICE studies, it has been shown that it ejects into the paravertebral space here, so that in such a way that it also blocks the ventral rami. But it is not it is very inconsistent. There are few studies which has been shown that ventral rami is also blocked. There are few studies where it has been shown to spread in the paravertebral space, but the mechanism is still inconclusive. But in exam, if they ask the indications, you can tell all these things. But the dorsal primary rami or the posterior primary rami 100% blocked, so that is why it gives a good analgesia for spine surgery and the paraspinal muscles or the skin incision on the back in the midline. Good. Any questions here? Again, again for the volume, it will be 20 to 30 ml at least.
Sir, can you just enumerate the structures again?
So skin, subcutaneous tissue, First muscle is the trapezius, second muscle is the rhomboides, third muscle is the erector spinae.
Erector spinae. And sir, these two, the structures are ribs or what? Sorry.
This is the transverse process.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. And so,
So
below that,
how to differentiate ribs and transverse processes? Ribs appear more conical like this, whereas transverse process will be square shaped. Okay. So this is how we differentiate a transverse process and a rib. And this white glistening structure is the pleura. These are all the lung tissues.
okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So conically is rib, more flat is the transverse process. So how to differentiate? See here also you look like transverse process, erector spinae muscle. Okay, how to differentiate is in PEX block, you are putting the probe across the serrations of the muscle fibers. Okay, muscle fibers are going in direction and the ultrasound probe is cutting perpendicular to the muscle fibers. So what happens, when you have an ultrasound, when you put a probe, you get the coarse arrangement of the muscle fibers like this. It's not a full probe linear fine pattern. The muscle fibers are arranged very coarse. Whereas if you see in erector spinae block, you can see highly nicely linearly arranged muscles. So this is how you differentiate an erector spinae from PEX block. Okay, it's one way to identify. Do you understand what I'm telling?
Yes, sir. Yes. Got
Here
it.
the probe is kept long axis along the muscle so that you can see the fibers arranged linearly in a straight line. Whereas in PEX, you're putting the probe across the muscle fibers so that you have the coarse appearance.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Because sometimes both look like erector spinae. So just be very careful. Last time also people got confused whether it's a PEX block or erector spinae.
Yes, sir.
Good. So,
So,
yeah.
on the lower side of the thoracic, this muscle layers will be different.
On the lower side of the thorax, what happens, when you come below T6 or T7, the rhomboides muscle gets disappeared. Okay. Below T2 level, no rhomboides, no trapezius. The muscle which is coming below the skin will be latissimus dorsi. Right. At the lower thoracic and lumbar level, the first muscle will be latissimus dorsi. Below that, you have the big bulky erector spinae. The erector spinae becomes very, very big as you go down and down. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Again, trapezius, rhomboid, erector spinae. So this is your point of injection. And the drug has to spread linearly above and linearly down. Right. So any questions in erector spinae? Indications, as I said, breast surgeries, any rib fractures, thoracotomies, ICD placements, and the indication
Fine.
keeps on extending. Okay. When you give erector spinae block at the lumbar level or low thoracic level, it can be used for nephrectomies, it can be used for lap colis, open colis. It also gives analgesia for hip surgeries when you do at lumbar level.
Okay.
So for post CS,
Post cesarean, of course, yes. It can also be used for post cesarean. So see, the nerve is blocked very, very proximal, close to the spinal cord. You can include any indications where the incision is there in the anterolateral abdominal wall.
so is it possible for labor analgesia?
But not been tried or explored in labor analgesia, because in labor analgesia, you need a lot of visceral coverage because uterus is a visceral organ. Do you think erector spinae will give a good analgesia? It blocks only the somatic nerves, okay? Unless it goes and spread into the paravertebral space, it doesn't produce any visceral analgesia. Paravertebral spread, again in the lumbar level, is very, very inconsistent. In thoracic level, it has been much defined, whereas at the lumbar level, it is very inconsistent, okay? So labor analgesia, erector spinae is not an option at all. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So these are three blocks they might ask you: PEX 1, PEX 2, and erector spinae. Perfect. Let's move on to abdominal wall blocks. Okay, so you got a 45 years female patient for open umbilical repair, and I've just scanned it. I'm just putting a video here, right? So what I've done is I kept the probe exactly above the umbilicus in the midline in a transverse plane. Okay, I kept a linear probe. What is the first midline structure in ultrasound image here? What are the midpoint when two, this is one side rectus muscle, okay? This is other side rectus muscle. What is the midline called?
Rectus sheath.
This is not a rectus sheath. Rectus sheath, the one which is covers the
Linea
rectus.
alba.
That is called as
Linea alba.
okay?
Linea alba.
So that is linea alba.
Linea alba.
Okay, linea alba is a midline structure, okay? So now let me show you. Okay, so I'm just putting the probe in the midline. Then I say slide lateral. Okay. Okay, now if you see here, this big bulky muscle is what?
Rectus.
So that is the rectus muscle, right?
Yeah.
So skin, subcutaneous tissue, and what is this first line called?
External oblique muscle.
There is only line, there is no muscle.
Scarpa, linea carpus.
Where are you reading Scarpa? No worry. Okay, this is the anterior rectus sheath. Okay, the first line which is covering the rectus muscle. Okay, this is the anterior rectus sheath. What is this first line here?
Posterior rectus.
That should be the posterior rectus sheath. So anterior rectus sheath, posterior rectus sheath. There is another line below the posterior rectus sheath, isn't it? You see here another line going below. Yes or no? There are two
Yes,
lines.
sir.
We appreciate that.
Yes.
Guys, communicate. I don't understand whether you're.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So what is the second line called?
Peritoneum.
It is not peritoneum. It is called as
Transverse fascia.
very good. It is called as the transversalis fascia. Okay. Where do you deposit the local anesthetic? In rectus sheath block.
Posterior rectus sheath. In between the transversalis fascia and the posterior rectus sheath.
Okay. So in between these two lines. In between these two lines, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
That's wrong. Okay. So that's the most important thing you have to understand. So
Between the
in
muscle
rectus
and the-
sheath block, you have to deposit between the muscle and the posterior rectus sheath here, not between the posterior rectus sheath and the transversalis fascia. Most important point. So this arrangement of posterior rectus sheath and the transversalis fascia is called as the tram track appearance. Like you see in the train track, two lines going side by side. So this arrangement is called as tram track appearance. Most important thing, never deposit the local anesthetic between posterior rectus sheath and transversalis fascia. Deposit between the muscle and the posterior rectus sheath, not intramuscular, between the muscle and the posterior rectus sheath. The moment you give the local anesthetic, the muscle has to get lifted away from the posterior rectus sheath. So that's a sign of perfect injection. Okay, what are the indications for giving rectus sheath block? Before that, tell me what are the nerves blocked, then only
Hernia.
you will understand the indications. What are the nerves which are blocked?
T6 to T10 and upper.
Okay, it blocks the anterior cutaneous nerves of T6 to T11. Okay, so this is the nerves which are blocked in the rectus sheath block. Now you can tell me the indications.
Anterior abdominal surgery.
Laparotomy.
Any laparotomies which is having midline incisions.
Laparotomy.
Okay, any laparotomies which is having midline incisions, umbilical hernia repairs. Okay, any surgeries around the umbilicus, all can be utilized rectus sheath as a good analgesia purpose. Right. So volume, again, it is a facial plane block. It is not a nerve block. It is a somatic block. So you have to use at least minimum 20 to 30 ml of local anesthetic. Okay. Is that
Sir, sorry to interrupt, sir. Can you just please highlight the structures again?
skin, subcutaneous
Yes.
tissue, anterior rectus sheath, rectus muscle. First line is the posterior rectus sheath. Second line is the fascia
Fascia
transversalis.
muscle.
These are all the abdominal contents, fat and the abdominal fat, and the layer below that is the peritoneum.
And
will-
sir, we deposit drug between posterior rectus sheath and
Between the
the
posterior
fascia
rectus sheath and the muscle, not here. Don't come the drug here, okay? Not between these two lines, okay? You have to deposit between the posterior rectus sheath and the muscle, okay? Here.
Okay, got it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right. So rectus sheath block, is it clear? So common vessel which can be injured in rectus sheath block.
Umbilical artery.
Centric vessels.
Umbilical artery. No.
Sorry,
Mesenteric.
sorry.
Right. What is the vessel which is injured?
Mesenteric vessels.
Good. Perfect. Someone tell me. Superficial epigastric artery. Okay. That is the one which runs in the rectus sheath. So that can get injured and you can have a rectus sheath hematoma. Okay. So that is one important vessel you have to be very careful when you give a rectus sheath block. Good. Any questions at all here? I'll put the video again so that you'll have one final look and then we can move on. Okay. Midline, linea alba. Then I say slide lateral. You get the rectus sheath and the fascia transversalis, peritoneal contents moving inside. And as you go lateral, the rectus muscle ends. And what is this junction called? What is the lateral end of rectus called? Oh my God, linea semilunaris. I haven't heard anything about that. Okay, midline is linea alba, lateral end is the linea semilunaris. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Come on, please communicate, guys, please. Okay, good. Let's move on to next abdominal wall block, which is the transversalis plane. Transverse abdominis plane block. Okay, the commonly performed block, the tap plane block. Okay, there are 4 different types of tap. Don't worry, if you just tap plane, if you sell tap plane, that is enough. Right. Let's start. Put your mics. Okay, linea alba there. Then as you slide lateral, that is going to be rectus sheath, rectus muscle. Then as you slide more lateral, you get the linea semilunaris. Okay, so these are the, as you slide more lateral in the abdominal wall, what are these 3 muscles called?
external
You
oblique.
see 3 muscles, okay? So this is the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. This is going to be the external oblique.
External oblique.
This is going to be internal oblique. This is going to be
Transverse abdominis.
Okay, how do you differentiate subcutaneous tissue from the muscles?
Fascia.
Fascia covering.
Fascia covering. Okay, can you tell me what fascia is covered there? No. Okay, there is a way to
The
identify.
fat protein, muscle fibers.
Sometimes, in obese patients, both subcutaneous fat and muscle fibers will have the same appearance. Okay, I'll tell you how to differentiate. Don't worry. Other important thing is how to identify which is external oblique, which is internal oblique, and which is transverse abdominis. The biggest muscle always it is internal oblique. The smallest muscle all the time it is going to be transverse abdominis. All right. Always in 99% of the individuals, the biggest muscle is internal oblique. The smallest muscle is going to be the transverse abdominis. Now let's see in a video how to differentiate subcutaneous tissue from muscles. Okay, here you go. Starting from the midline, linea alba there, rectus, rectus is ending here. This is linea semilunaris, where all the 3 abdominal muscles come and converge. Then as you slide more lateral, as you slide more lateral, you see 3 abdominal muscles. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now I'll tell you how to differentiate subcutaneous tissue from the fat. Okay, as I reach the abdominal muscles, I'm sliding the probe up and down. You see, there's a sliding movement of the muscles, and you see the subcutaneous fat, which is very static.
Yes, sir.
You appreciate that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll put it again. Okay, as I come to the abdominal muscles, I'm sliding the probe up and down or rowing the probe up and down. The subcutaneous tissue will be static, but because of the muscle fiber arrangement, you can see the muscles sliding each other.
Yes, sir.
You got the point? Okay, now the question is where to deposit the local anesthetic in tab block?
In between internal oblique and the transverse abdominis.
Yeah, this is a plane. Okay, this is a plane. In between internal oblique and transverse abdominis, you're gonna deposit the local anesthetic here, right? So this is a point of never deposit, because if you confuse with external oblique and subcutaneous veins, what happen? What you'll assume this is going to be external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis, and you'll deposit the local anesthetic here, and eventually your block will fail. Okay, so try to differentiate the subcutaneous fat from the abdominal wall muscles. The point of injection should be between internal oblique and transverse abdominis in this facial plane. Okay, what are the indications for tab block? What are surgeries where tab block can be utilized?
Abdominal hysterectomy.
Okay, any abdominal wall, any surgeries involving particularly in the lower abdominal wall. Okay, not in the upper abdominal wall. Any surgeries involving the lower abdominal wall. What are the nerves which are blocked? In classical posterior tab block, you block anterior cutaneous nerves of
T6 to T10.
T7 to
T12. Okay, these are the nerves which are blocked in the tab block. Okay, in the classical posterior. Okay, there is one more tab block called oblique subcostal tab. I mean the subcostal tab. Have you heard about subcostal tab? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the subcostal tab blocks
Yes,
T6
sir.
to T9.
T7.
Whereas T6 to T9. Whereas the classical posterior tab, which you commonly do above the iliac crest, that blocks only T9 to T12. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good. Excellent. So volume again, this is a facial plane block. So you have to give a large volume of local anesthetic, minimum 20 to 30 ml.
30.
Any vessel which is important here. Deep
So iliac
circumflex.
vessels.
Okay, deep circumflex iliac artery. Okay, that runs in the tab plane when you do a posterior tab. So that is another vessel which is very important while you're doing a block. For rectus sheath block, it is superficial epigastric artery. For tab block, it is going to be deep circumflex iliac. Yes, someone asked me a question. Yes, ultrasound image, is that clear? Do you have a orientation now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, you told posterior tab block, right, sir?
Yeah.
At that point I didn't catch. So
Okay,
now anterior cutis is now being blocked.
posterior tab block is given and the posterior to the mid-axillary line. I mean, anterior axillary line. Okay. Subcostal tab is given just below the costal margin. I have a video. I'll show it probably if you have time. I'll show it at the end. How they are different. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So again, one last final view. So linea alba, rectus sheath. So when you give this type of image, there'll be rectus sheath questions on rectus sheath. Generally, they don't keep rectus sheath. Don't worry. Linea semilunaris. Slide lateral, you get the bulky internal oblique, and then 3 abdominal muscles. Slide up and down to confirm which is a fat and which is a muscle. That's it. So deposit between internal oblique and transverse abdominis. Good. Okay, another important block which I feel that you have a likely chance to have in this exam, because there have been a lot of this block has been done in quite in many of the institutes they've started doing this. Have you heard about quadratus lumborum block?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So they might keep, because for the last batch they kept transverse abdominis and the erector spinae, which means you have to learn something about the quadratus lumborum block. It is a pure ultrasound guided block. Okay. For the quadratus lumborum block, since it's a deeper muscle, you have to use low frequency curvilinear probe. Okay. For rectus sheath and tab block, the high frequency probe is enough. Whereas for the quadratus lumborum block, since the muscle is located very deep, you have to use a low frequency curvilinear probe. Okay, shall we start scanning?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, so now I kept the curved probe in the midline. Okay, so this is the linea alba. Now, because of the curvilinear probe, your muscles will appear very thin and small. Okay, the resolution is poor, but I have marked and labeled all the muscles, so don't worry. Okay, now I kept the probe in the midline in a transverse axis. I'm sliding lateral. Okay, that's the rectus muscle. Okay. Then as I slide lateral, you see the 3 abdominal muscles coming there on top.
Yes, sir.
External oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis, right? Okay. So this is the lateral most or the posterolateral most end of the transverse abdominis. Able to follow with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes,
Alright,
sir.
guys. So this is the transverse abdominis muscle, right? So at the transverse is ending, you see a big quadrilateral muscle coming here. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
this big quadrilateral muscle where the transverse abdominis is ending is the quadratus lumborum. Okay. Now just again follow the video from the beginning. So this is aortic pulsation. Okay. This is aorta onto the vertebral body. So 3 muscles, external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis. As you slide lateral, the transverse is going to end. There is a big quadrilateral muscle here. This is the quadratus lumborum. Okay. So important thing here now. right? If you see here, so this is the transverse abdominis muscle is ending here. This is the quadratus lumborum muscle, and you have a rabbit-shaped appearance, right? Rabbit ear appearance. You see here, there is a bone which is having a rabbit ear appearance. Yes or no?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
like ear of a rabbit and the body of a rabbit. Okay, so this is nothing but the transverse process and the body of the vertebra. This is vertebral body and this is transverse process. On top of the transverse process is located the quadratus lumborum. Anterior to the this is anterior, this is posterior. Anterior to the transverse process, you have another big bulky muscle. This is the psoas muscle. Behind the transverse process, you have the erector spinae. So this is the appearance. We call them as the or the clover leaf appearance or the shamrock sign. Okay, you see like a leaf, clover leaf. You see their appearance? Yes and no.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
able to follow with the clover. Okay, so this appearance is called as a clover leaf appearance. Again, with this image, they can even ask you about lumbar plexus. Okay, so this typical appearance is the clover leaf appearance. There are 4 different types of kewel. Okay, one is called as the lateral kewel. In lateral kewel, you deposit the local anesthetic between quadratus lumborum muscle and transverse abdominis here. First block. Do you understand? Unmute and tell me, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is kewel muscle, no doubt in that, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is erector spinae muscle, no doubt in that, right? This is psoas muscle, okay?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So now where to deposit the local anesthetic? 4 kewels. Number 1 is the lateral kewel. In lateral quadratus lumborum block, you deposit the local anesthetic between transverse here and the quadratus lumborum here. This point, that is lateral kewel. Okay. Second kewel is the posterior quadratus lumborum. Rest all, please put your mics in mute. Yeah. Second thing is the posterior kewel block. So this is erector spinae border. This is kewel border. If you deposit between the erector spinae and the kewel, that becomes posterior kewel. Okay. Third and the most important thing is the anterior kewel. So there you deposit the local anesthetic between the quadratus lumborum muscle and the psoas muscle at this junction. So this is the deep anterior block or the anterior quadratus lumborum block. So it is the anterior kewel block which blocks the lumbar plexus nerve roots. So that is utilized for hip analgesia. And the last block is the intramuscular, which is nothing but giving the local anesthetic inside the kewel. Unmute and tell me whether you understood these 4 blocks.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, kindly repeat.
Once.
Yeah, I will repeat again. No worries.
Thank you.
I'll repeat again. No worries. Yeah. So this is transverse abdominis. Agreed, everyone?
Yes, sir.
This is quadratus lumborum border. Okay. And this is erector spinae. And this is the the rabbit head and the vertebral body. And this is psoas muscle, right? You deposit the local anesthetic between the transverse abdominis and the kewel here at this junction. That becomes lateral kewel or kewel 1. You deposit the local anesthetic between the erector spinae and the kewel muscle. That becomes posterior kewel or kewel 2. You deposit the local anesthetic between the psoas and the quadratus lumborum muscle. That becomes anterior kewel or kewel 3. If we deposit inside the muscle itself, that becomes intramuscular kewel or kewel 4. Of all the kewels, anterior kewel is very useful for hip analgesia because the drug spreads into the psoas muscle, which is where the lumbar plexus nerve roots are located. Is that clear? Fine.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
what is
Yes, sir.
So they might keep
sir, what is above the kewel?
above the kewel. This muscle is called as the latissimus dorsi. Okay. So in posterior QL,
Okay,
you deposit between the rectus spinae, quadratus lumborum, latissimus dorsi, this plane. Okay. Right. So my presumption is you might get this cloverleaf appearance in your exam. So find which is anterior, which is posterior. Don't get confused. The anterior is psoas, posterior is rectus spinae. Okay. They might mention in your image which is anterior, which is posterior. Okay.
okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Indications for QL, like all abdominal surgeries involving anterior and lower abdominal wall, below umbilical surgeries, incisions involving anterior and the lateral abdominal wall. Then for iliac crest bone grafting, then analgesia for hip fractures, nephrectomies, generally depending upon the different types of QL, it blocks from T7 to L4. Okay. Abdominal wall blocks is
Drug
over.
injecting. Sir, volume of drug.
Volume of drug, again, it's a facial plane block, minimum 30 ml, minimum at least 25 to 30 ml of local anesthetic.
Okay.
So as I said, all facial plane blocks goes without saying that you have to give minimum 25 to 30 ml.
Sir, what about the intramuscular QL? How much ml?
Again, it's going to be same, mate. Okay. There's nothing different. You're not blocking the particular nerve. You're just giving a large volume so that it spreads and blocks. Okay. Okay, one final time. This is the aorta vertebral body. Linea semilunaris, 3 abdominal muscles. Then as I slide more lateral, transverse abdominis, quadratus lumborum. Then I'm sliding even more lateral and tilting, and I'm going to find the vertebral body transverse process junction for the rabbit ear appearance. Okay, so this is rabbit ear, vertebral body transverse process, QL, psoas, and rectus spinae. Okay.
Yes.
Right. So here, I put the image the other side. Don't get looking at this video, don't get confused and find this is psoas and this is rectus spine. Okay. Don't get confused. See where the abdominal wall muscles are located. If you see abdominal wall muscles here, that must be anterior. Okay. And the rabbit ear should be, if it is like this is vertebral body. If the vertebral body is this side, this is anterior. Abdominal muscles are this side, this is anterior. If the vertebral body is this side, that is anterior. If the abdominal muscle is this side is anterior. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Now abdominal wall block is over. Lastly, we'll move on to adductor canal block. Okay. Adductor canal block is the block which is used for an analgesia for TKR. Any knee surgeries, any arthroscopy, any knee surgeries for a joint replacement, all the surgery, adductor canal block is one of the useful option for analgesia. So what are the, when it comes to adductor canal block, they'll definitely ask about the borders forming the adductor canal. What are the adductor canal borders are formed of? So this is medial end, this is medial end, this is lateral end. Roof is by?
So sartorius muscle.
Sartorius.
Okay, so this is the roof. This big bulky muscle is the sartorius.
Sartorius.
So they will definitely ask to mark or label this sartorius muscle. Okay, roof is formed by sartorius. Then this is the medial end. So anteromedial border is formed by the
Adductor magnus.
Adductor magnus.
Adductor longus. Adductor longus. Okay. Adductor longus. And this border is formed by the
Adductor magnus.
vastus medialis.
Vastus medialis. Okay.
Okay. So this is vastus medialis muscle. This is adductor longus muscle. And the roof is formed by the sartorius. So this is superficial femoral artery. And the point of injection should be here at this junction. So needle will come like this. It will come like this. It will come and penetrate here and give the local anesthetic here. Again, you have to give minimum 25 to 30 ml of anesthetic. What are the nerves which are blocked in the adductor canal? Number one,
Femoral nerve.
saphenous nerve, no femoral nerve. Okay. The main concept of adductor canal is to prevent the blockage of femoral nerve because it produces motor weakness. So surgeon doesn't want motor weakness in TKR patients. So this is a motor nerve sparing. You are blocking only the saphenous nerve here. Then nerve to vastus medialis. Then posterior division of obturator nerve. And lastly, there is one more nerve. Okay, I'll tell you that, no worries. So most important thing are these nerves. Saphenous nerve, nerve to vastus medialis, posterior division of obturator nerve. So these are the three nerves which are getting blocked there. Okay. Main purpose, any knee surgery analgesia like arthroscopies, TKRs, fractures, all for analgesia purpose, you can use adductor canal block. Any questions here?
During TKR, there will be tibial plating also, but
Yeah.
how does this provide analgesia?
Okay, in tibial plating, if you see the knee joint supply, if I start talking about knee joint supply, it will take 2 hours. Don't worry, okay? The saphenous nerve supplies the anteromedial part of the knee joint, okay? The lateral part of the knee joint is supplied by the obturator division. The posterior part of the knee capsule, behind capsule, is supplied by the saphenous part, sciatic nerve division, okay? So by giving an adductor canal block, you are blocking majority of the anterior part of the joint and the lateral part of the joint. Of course, the posterior part of the joint, you need sciatic nerve block, okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, any other questions here? Right, so what are other possibilities they can ask? They can ask you about lumbar plexus. Anatomy of the lumbar plexus. So very easy to remember. T12 alone forms the T12 and L1 joins together and form the subcostal nerve. Sorry, T12 alone forms the subcostal nerve. T12 and L1 join together and form the iliohypogastric nerve. Okay. L1 alone forms the ilioinguinal nerve. Okay. L1 and L2 join together and form lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. L2, L3 and L4 join together and they get divided into anterior and posterior division. Anterior division is obturator nerve, posterior division is femoral nerve. That's it. This is lumbar plexus.
Sir, kindly repeat.
T12 alone forms the lumbar plexus is formed by T12, L1, L2, L3 and L4. T12 alone forms subcostal nerve. T12 and L1 join together and form the iliohypogastric nerve. L1 alone forms ilioinguinal nerve. L1 and L2 join together and form lateral femoral cutaneous. L2, L3 and L4 join together. Then they again divide into anterior division and posterior division. Anterior division of L2, L3 and L4 is called as obturator. Posterior division of L2, L3 and L4 is called as the femoral nerve. Okay. So PNS guided block is possible, but don't worry, they will not ask you PNS guided adductor canal block.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, is adductor canal block used as a sole anesthetic for?
It is just only for analgesia. It can't be used for anesthesia.
Because here it is written that you are planning for regional anesthesia. So
I'm just telling about the analgesia options alone.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So what is the twitch seen in adductor canal block?
Adductor canal block, we don't use PNS because it's majority of the spinal nerves. Okay. In PNS, they stimulate the nerve to vastus medialis. Okay. They just have the specific contraction of the vastus medialis muscle around. That's a twitch they look for in PNS guided.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, the popliteal approach of sciatic nerve block.
Popliteal approach, I don't know whether they last, so I didn't include. Anyway, it's fine. I'll tell you. No problem. Right. So what are the popliteal approaches? So first thing you have to do is find the popliteal crease. Okay. Find the popliteal crease. Measure. Put a perpendicular line in the popliteal crease. Right. From the intersecting point in this midline, take 7 centimeter. Mark 7 centimeter here. Okay. So at the mark 7 centimeter, from the point where you mark 7 centimeter junction, 1 centimeter medial. That will be your entry point. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, of course, there are additional other blocks. Femoral nerve block, since many of them would have done it, I didn't include here. So femoral nerve block, then IPAC is there. They might not ask you, just know the names alone. Then adductor canal block, that's it in upper limb. Femoral nerve block, I think majority will be knowing how to do PNS, so I didn't include here, okay?
Obturator nerve block.
Obturator nerve block, again, it is important only when you're doing a TURP surgeries. Otherwise, specifically, we don't do obturator nerve block anywhere. Okay, so lumbar plexus block and classical sciatic nerve block. So try to read it. If you want, I can tell now. Otherwise, if you are able to go and read it, you can go and read.
Sir, obturator nerve block is set for TURBT surgeries.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where only specifically we do obturator nerve block. Otherwise, we don't do anywhere specifically.
So please tell sciatic nerve block.
Okay, you want me to tell sciatic nerve block? Don't worry. Right, I'll finish up this today's lecture and then lastly I can add sciatic nerve block. Okay. Right. So you got a patient who is having blister and abscess. The surgeon wants to do IND. Patient wants to do only regional. What are the options there?
Ankle block.
Ankle nerve block.
Okay, you can do ankle nerve block. Then you can do
Popliteal spine.
Popliteal block.
popliteal plus saphenous nerve block or the adductor canal block.
Spinal anesthesia.
You can do femoral plus sciatic. Lastly, you can do spinal. Lastly, you can do epidural. Finally, you can give GA, right? Good.
So can we use saddle block for this?
Saddle block blocks mainly the perineal junction, S2, S3, S4, right?
Okay.
Right.
Can
So,
you please repeat these blocks?
sorry,
Can you please repeat these blocks? I mean the names.
ankle blocks, popliteal plus adductor canal, or you can do femoral plus sciatic or femoral plus popliteal. Then you can give lumbar plexus and sciatic plexus. And lastly, you can give spinal. If you go more proximal, you give spinal and epidural. That's it. Right. So what are the nerves which are blocked in the ankle block? Come on, tuck.
Saphenous nerve.
Posterior
tibial.
Posterior tibial nerve.
Saphenous nerve. Yeah. Posterior tibial
Posterior
nerve.
tibial nerve. Deep peroneal nerve.
Deep
Superficial and
nerve.
deep peroneal. Sural nerve.
Sural nerve.
Superficial peroneal nerve. And lastly,
Superficial peroneal nerve.
sural nerve. These are the 5 nerves which are blocked. What is the unique feature of saphenous nerve?
Longest nerve.
Mostly sensory.
All are sensory here, except
Longest nerve. Sir.
okay. No. What is the unique feature of saphenous nerve?
Only now coming.
L4, L5
Only femoral nerve branch, sir.
Okay, so this is the only one which is coming from the lumbar plexus root. From lumbar plexus. All these are from sciatic. Okay, that's the most important thing, right? So if you want to give a complete analgesia before knee joint, a complete anesthesia before knee joint without blocking saphenous nerve, it is impossible, right? So lumbar saphenous nerve is the only one which is coming from the lumbar plexus roots. Rest all from the sciatic nerve. Okay, what is the unique feature of posterior tibial nerve?
It supplies the entire soul of the.
Okay, rest all are supplying some part of the body. It is not unique, right?
It is the only motor.
It is the only motor nerve, right? It is the only nerve which has got a motor potential. Rest all are pure sensory nerves, right? I don't want to waste time with how do you give the block. I think everyone would have given at least once ankle block in their operation theater. So you know how to block it. So another few word about sacral plexus. Very easy to remember. Join these 3, superior gluteal nerve. Kick off the top one. Join these 3, inferior gluteal nerve. Kick off the top one. Join these 3, posterior cutaneous nerve of thigh. Join all the 5, that becomes sciatic nerve. Simple. That's our sacral plexus.
Please repeat.
Join L4, L5, S1. Okay. That becomes superior gluteal nerve. Kick off the top one. Join next 3. L5, S1, S2. That becomes inferior gluteal nerve. Kick off the top one. Join the next 3. S1, S2, S3. That becomes posterior cutaneous nerve of thigh. Join everything together. L4 to S1, S3. That becomes sciatic nerve. Okay.
So pudendal nerve.
Prudental nerve it comes here, but it is not a part of sacral plexus, okay? Prudental nerve, again, kick the top one, join S2, S3, S4, that becomes prudental nerve. Top 3, kick the top one. Join 3, kick the top one. You can identify the nerves easily. Okay, right. Someone was asking me about square flush test and how to find the dampening yesterday, right? Is the person who asked me, is it she here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the square wave test or the square flush test is mainly check whether the system is optimally damped or not. So how to do a square flush test? Okay. So you have in the in the arterial transducer, you have the fast flush valve. When you open it, what happens? The saline will flow fastly into the arterial line. Yes or no? Because your pressure is to 300 millimeters of mercury. Now, as you pressurize, there will be a complete straight line, right? So I'm pressurizing it. The moment you release, you see this one. Let me put it back again. Okay, I'm flushing it. The moment I release, I see 2 oscillations here. You see here, one big oscillation, then another small oscillation. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Just watch it again. I'm flushing it and I'm releasing the flush. You see 2 oscillations here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in an optimally damped system, there shouldn't be no more than 2. If you have like this, it means it is underdamped. First point. Okay. So when there are more than 2 oscillations, it is underdamped. Second thing, the amplitude of second oscillation should be less than 50% of the amplitude of the first oscillation. So these are the 2 criteria to tell that the system is optimally damped or not.
Okay, sir.
Clear?
Sir, repeat, sir. Repeat, sir.
Okay. After the fast flush test, note the number of oscillations here. Here there is 1, 2. If it is more than 2, it is underdamped. First point. Second thing, the amplitude of second oscillation should be less than 50% of the height of the first oscillation. Only then it is said to be optimally damped.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Okay, good. I think I covered some extent. Of course, there are femoral
Sir, if the amplitude of the second oscillation is more, it is underdamped or overdamped?
It is underdamped again.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Right. Any questions in today's regional anesthesia discussion so far? So read about the brachial plexus and all the branches. Don't make mistake in any anatomy. Lumbar plexus, sacral plexus, I told you if you read this is enough. Then abdominal wall blocks, chest wall blocks, we discussed in detail. Coming to the lower limb, someone asked me about this sciatic nerve block, right? For that, I need an image, right? Hang on for a minute.
So, do we need to study lung ultrasound as well?
Sorry?
Lung ultrasound.
Lung ultrasound.
Yes, sir.
The focus they asked.
Lung ultrasound, I've included that in the ASCII. Don't worry.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
I've included that in the ASCII. So
CT scans also. CT